Let's take a look at how to pass in dynamic values to our queries and mutations. Up until this point, we're just using a hard-coded value. When we move on to our application and we start working on our React client, we're going to need to pass in dynamic values that change according to what the user has supplied. The way to provide dynamic values with GraphQL queries and mutations is with GraphQL variables. We declare variables next to the keyword of the operation that we're executing, either query or mutation, and every GraphQL variable is declared with a $sign. So within parentheses we say $username for declaring our username variable, and we also have to declare its type. So the data type that's going to be stored in this username variable is going to be of type string, and we need to make sure that this corresponds with the argument that we're passing to it, that it matches the data type that we've declared up here within our createUser class. To supply a variable value to schema.execute, we can add a second argument called variable values. And between curly braces, we can provide first the name of the variable that we want to provide a value to, and that's the username variable, and following a colon, the value. Then to actually use the variable in place of a hard-coded value, we'll supply to the username argument the username variable. Now let's save schema.py and run this, and we should see a new user with the username that we supplied on the variable. Let's try this out for our query as well, in particular our users query, where we'll provide limit as a dynamic value. So we'll remove this mutation. And normally, instead of opening up a set of curly braces and then providing our users query as well as the subfields on it, we need to provide the keyword of the operation we're performing, which is query, before the opening curly brace. We want to provide the limit argument to our user's query. So we'll provide a limit variable, we'll declare a limit variable, and note that in addition to declaring variables, you can also give your queries or mutations a name. So say we wanted to call this the getUsers query. We could provide that before our variables. Limit, remember, has a type of graphene.int, so it's going to be of the GraphQL scalar type int. Here we can also specify whether it's required or not with an exclamation point. We'll use an exclamation point if it is required, and we can remove it if it's not. And we know that since limit has a fallback value of none, it's not required. If it were to be required but wasn't provided, we would get an error. So we're declaring our limit variable, and before we pass it into the limit argument, we'll create our variable value limit set to the integer 1. Then we'll pass in our limit variable to the user's query. We'll save, and we'll execute this, and we should get our users list with just one user.